here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of Paul Leary, he of the Butthole Surfers, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all the other groovy stuff. There is a new film that has just been released titled The Butthole Surfers, The Whole Truth and Nothing But, with two B's. I'll put a link in the notes below with that, more about that film, which is, I saw it last week. It's absolutely fantastic. So do, when you can, get a chance to watch it. But this is the interview with Paul, so after several minutes of interest and but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Paul, it's over to you.
Well, I was 6 or so years old when the Beatles played the Ed Sullivan Show, and then I immediately had taught my dad into buying me an electric guitar. I had to get in on that action, and so I grew up with the Beatles and Creedence Clearwater Revival and Grand Funk Railroad. So
right,
great time to be alive.
Well, yeah. So you drifted through the whole sort of 60s period. So when you got to 13, this was the late 60s. Had you sort of picked up on the whole sort of interest in counterculture that was kind of happening from 67 with the Summer of Love and, you know, the wonderful world of psychedelia with Jimi Hendrix and the poetry of Jim Morrison? Was that all on your radar at that stage?
Well, some of it was, Hendrix and Cream and that kind of stuff, but it was getting played on the, mainstream radio. So it wasn't like I had to root it out or anything.
Yes, and there you go. And did you have any other older brothers or sisters that gave you any musical direction in life?
I had older sisters, but they weren't into music. I had an older cousin that lived in Wyoming, and she took me to see two Beatles movies, Help and Hard Day's Night, and she turned me on to the Animals back in the 60s. That was a fun one to listen to.
Well, yes, absolutely. Little Eric Burden or Burton, I can't remember. Yes, Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. So when you got sort of with the 60s that finished, were you aware of things like, Hendrix and Joplin and Jim Morrison and before that Brian Jones? Was that all kind of stuff that you went, oh, blimey, that's a bit strange? And also the Beatles broke up in 1970. So I just wondered, did you think, oh, I've missed pop music, it's all going to be finishing now?
I'd been into the Beatles for so long that I don't remember being traumatized by the Beatles breaking up, because it seemed like they'd sort of run their course anyway. And by then I was, like I mentioned, Grand Funk Railroad, and that was my next big love attraction in music was that and Blood Rock and boy. But that, again, that stuff was all just bubbling under mainstream. It wasn't like underground or anything like that.
Yes, well, absolutely. So when did you say you got your first guitar?
When I was 5 years old, my parents bought me a toy guitar from Mexico that cost $5, and I played on that long enough to where when I was 6, they bought me a real regular acoustic guitar, and they paid for guitar lessons from an old man who was really mean and was always chastising me for not practicing enough.
Right.
And it was not very fun at all, but I stuck with it, especially after seeing the Beatles and talking my dad into buying me an electric guitar. I was in like the 3rd grade or something like that, and I formed a band in elementary school and got to play in front of the school at a talent show, and then got to play again the next year. And so that was a lot of fun. Played in garage bands in junior high school and played high school stage band, where I was reading like charts for songs. That charts were written by like horn players and stuff. And so that was really difficult with a lot of strange chords that I had to learn. So
yes,
that was a lot of fun.
Did things come? I was going to say, did it come easily to you, or did you just practice like a lot?
I practiced enough. I ended up with a guitar teacher that I could take records that I liked into lessons, and he would listen to the songs and then show me how to play them. And so not only did I learn how to play songs that I liked, but I learned how to listen to music and figure out what was being played and just be able to play stuff from hearing it. So that was very useful.
Yes, my God. So you mentioned your first those two Beatles albums. So what was your first concert that you went to?
My first concert was Grand Funk Railroad in, I believe it was 1972.
Right.
I went with my friend Flavio, and I filled up a canteen. I stole some whiskey from my dad's liquor cabinet and filled up a canteen with whiskey, and had my dad drop Flavio and myself off in the backside of the arena so we could jump a fence to get in, and loved the show and got a little rowdy, and we ended up getting thrown out by the police at the end of the show during the encore song, and we shot the finger at the police, and it was a great time. And then my second concert was Creedence Clearwater Revival, and I got thrown out of that concert by the police as well for dancing in the aisles.
Right. God, that's very.
And then after that, I was seeing all kinds of stuff. I saw Elton John in the early '70s. I took I don't know if you remember, I think it was a Cheech and Chong album that came with a giant rolling paper.
Yes.
And I rolled a giant, foot-long joint and took it to see Elton John with my friends, and I lit it up, and they wouldn't smoke it with me. So I ended up having to smoke this entire foot-long joint by myself, and then they wanted to walk around, and boy, I could barely stand up. That was a good time.
Yes, well, that's right. Yeah, it's because I had an older brother, and he was into prog, but he also had the Elton John Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album, which I was quite fascinated by because it was so musically intriguing. He also had Sergeant Pepper, which was also musically intriguing for a kid who was about.
Man, every time the Beatles came out with something, it was just like all of music advanced a little bit, and that was, I just don't know if we'll ever see anything like that ever again.
No, well, actually, did you see that amazing documentary, that 8-hour film that the guy who did Lord of the Rings made, where they were recording that last album, and that was where they just all turned up, and they had about a month to record this album, and just seeing.
I started watching that with my wife, and she got bored with it, so I stopped watching it, and I need to start watching it again without her, and she's about to leave town on work for a week, so I'll probably pick that back up again. I need to finish that one.
Oh God, I was quite captivated by it, especially when
I was too. But my wife is younger than I am, and she kind of missed out on that whole Beatles thing.
Yes, but it was also just the process of people, turning up in the morning, having a bit of a chat, looking at the papers, making a cup of tea, and then thinking, right, we better get to work, and trying to write material, and then sort of realizing that some of those songs that they had started working on became these kind of classics. And
that's fun stuff. That's fun to watch.
And also conversations that they had that they didn't realize they'd been mic'd. So there was a conversation with Paul and John, and the flower, on the table. And I think something like the flowers had got a mic in them, and they obviously didn't know they were being recorded. And then, oh yes, and then George kept quitting the band, so they had to keep turning up to his house saying, "Do you want to just come back? Sorry about that, George." Yes, you could probably relate to all that stuff, couldn't you, quite easily?
Yeah.
So when you got to 16, which would have been about 1973, I'm doing my maths, did you leave school? Do you go to college at that stage?
I went to college at age 18. I went to Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. My dad was a professor there, so I got to go for free. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have gone to college. And I ended up getting a degree in art with a minor in business, and that's where I met Gibby Haynes, the singer for the Butthole Surfers.
Right, it all started. And then obviously you'd gone from sort of the 60s and early 70s to that world of punk. You would have been the perfect age with punk. Did that...
Oh, yeah, I saw the Sex Pistols play in San Antonio at Randy's Rodeo, and I was just out of my mind. I just loved it so much. Punk rock was like the biggest relief in the world. We'd had a few years of horrible fucking disco music, like Boss Skaggs and shit like that. And then all of a sudden there was this disrespectful shit coming out of England, and that was just such a breath of fresh air.
Yes, and Steve Jones. Were you captivated with Steve on
Oh yeah,
guitar?
and I saw a movie about him and the process he went through in forming the Sex Pistols, and I just thought that was fascinating.
Yes, and he's turned out to be one of the decent ones in the band, really, hasn't he? So, good old Steve. He's kind of reinvented himself
And
somehow.
they're all pretty decent, aren't they?
Oh yeah, I think it's John.
I know Johnny Lydon Rotten gets a bad rap sometimes, but I've encountered him a couple of times over the years, and I think he's an okay dude.
Yes, I think he likes to provoke, but you never know if
Yeah.
whether he really means it or not. But there you go. It's all to do with our political time. So when you were there at university college, did you then sort of form any bands during that time?
Well, I was on the 5 year plan, and I didn't touch guitar for 5 years. After I graduated from high school, I put the guitar down. I just decided I wasn't going to be the next AC/DC, which I would have loved to have been, because that was probably my favorite band. You know, when I graduated in '75, I loved Bon Scott and all that stuff, but I just figured it wasn't me, and so I wanted to become a stockbroker or the next Pablo Picasso. I couldn't really decide which one, and then I graduated from college and did not get a job, and Gibby did get a job. He got a job with as a accountant for Pete Marwick and Mitchell, which at the time was the largest accounting firm in the world. And we formed a band while he was working for that company, and he lasted there, I think, less than a year. And then we
Yeah.
just decided that we needed to pack up and move to California where the action was, and that's what we did. And we went out to California and we starred. We played a few shows. We got a record deal with Dead Kennedy's label, Alternative Tentacles,
Yes.
and that was quite a story. I don't know if you want to hear that one or
Well,
not.
yes, let's have a listen. Well, actually, on that, when I watched the film, which we'll come to in a bit, but I was very excited because my brother, who was, I mentioned, 7 years older than me, and he was very studious, so he was going to just get himself a career, and so he was into prog rock. He kind of ticks all the boxes, but he becomes an accountant, and that's his first job was with Pete Marwick and Mitchell. They had an
All
office
right.
in Norwich, and so I didn't realise when the movie mentioned that, I did not see that one coming. That was quite amazing, really. So I didn't realise they were a global company, I have to confess. So I thought they were just regional, but no, they were big. Yeah. So
And now they aren't even around anymore.
right? They've just been. Yeah, I never followed
So
the.
they fucked up.
Oh, nice. So there you go. It always happens, does it? So yes, alternative tentacles. How did that sort of come about? With
Well, we sold our possessions and paid for gas to get out to Los Angeles, and we played a show out in Los Angeles. I think we were opening up for the Minutemen or something like that, and we met Spot, and Spot liked us, and he took us into a Total Access recording studio overnight, when nobody else was in there, and we recorded a few songs, and that's where I fell in love with the recording studio. But after that, we were like starving in Los Angeles, and so we took our last money and decided we were going to drive up to San Francisco because they had soup kitchens there, and you could eat for free like 5 or 6 days a week, and that's what we did. We went to San Francisco, but our van was pretty shitty van, and there's a big bridge that takes you over some body of water. I think it's the Bay. They call it the Bay Bridge. It wasn't the Golden Gate Bridge, but it was like it. And the van started breaking down, and we're in rush hour traffic going up the hill of this bridge, and the engine starts dying. And I thought, man, if we don't make it to the top, we're going to die on this bridge. And we barely make it to the top of the bridge. The engine dies, and we were able to coast all the way back down and coasted off the first exit and rolled to a stop in front of this funky industrial tool and die building. And we were sitting there going, what the hell do we do now? We had nothing, nowhere to go. And we look over and see that the building we were parked in front of had punk rockers loading drums and guitar amps into the front door. And so we got out and we started unloading our equipment in there as well until this woman came out and said, "Who are you?" And when we was like, "We're the Butthole Surfers," and she said, "Well, you're not playing here." And we started crying and said, "Oh, we got nothing. Please let us play." And she let us play 3 songs.
Right.
And we played 3 songs, and the Dead Kennedys showed up, and they were in attendance. They ended up playing a surprise show there that night. And Jello Biafra liked our 3 songs enough to sign us to Alternative Tentacles right there on the spot. Shortly after, our drummer and bass player quit the band, so we were down to a 2-piece, just Gibby and I, and we had to go back to Texas because the van belonged to the drummer that quit. And we ended up playing some shows. We opened up for TSOL as a 2-piece, and we had a record deal and no band, but it didn't stop us from going into the studio. We went into a really low-life studio in San Antonio that was barely good enough to record demos, and we recorded our first EP and our first LP as a 2-piece. And we were like in the process of begging drummers, any drummer that we knew, to come in and play drums on our songs. And about halfway through the first EP, we talked King Coffee into joining our band. He was from Fort Worth in a band called the Hugh Beaumont Experience. And he came down on a Greyhound bus to join our band and play on our record. And he had 2 floor toms, a snare drum, and a crash cymbal, and that was his drum kit. And he stood up, and it was just so much fun. And he's been with us ever since.
Yes.
And Gibby and I lived in the tool shed behind the studio. And boy, those were the days.
Yes, I think that was probably quite hardcore. Though I do remember stories of, I don't know, members of the Faces, people who toured with Jeff Beck or somebody, and it was like Rod Stewart and, I don't know, one of the other members having to sort of go around trash cans at night when they were touring America, sort of back at restaurants, trying to find if anybody had left any food or chucked food out.
Oh, yeah, there's always some food there.
And, just having, because they wouldn't be paid, and whoever it was, it might have been Jeff Beck, somebody who got the money wasn't going to give it to the rest of the band, so they just had to go around sneaking around.
Jeff Beck, way to go, dude.
I can't remember which one it was, but it was like people just saying, they just had to sort of scrounge in dustbins in those early years when they were on tour. So that's so with you and Gibby then, did you find that there was an immediate moment then that was it just like this is the creative partnership like Lennon, McCartney, or Richards and Jagger, David Bowie and Mick Ronson? Was there that kind of chemistry between the two of you?
Well, like I say, in college, I went 5 years without touching a guitar, and Gibby kept trying to talk me. Gibby wanted to play in a band, and he was going over to the drummer's house and playing music with him, and he finally talked me into coming over and playing with him one day, and I did, and I fell in love again with playing, and that was it. We knew we had to keep doing it, and that's what we were going to do, and either succeed or die in the process. And there was a while when I thought I was going to die.
Yes, well, it was quite grim actually, and also trying to get a sort of a sort of permanent lineup. That was also quite tricky, wasn't it? I could see bass players are sort of, you were into almost double figures at one stage, weren't you? And this was
Yeah,
in only a very short period of time.
We had a bass player who played on our first LP named Bill Jolly, and he was the best musician in the band. He wasn't really into the punk scene or anything like that, so he was a little bit of an odd fit, but he liked playing with us, and he actually toured with us for a little while. And when we came back to Texas to do some more recording, we just lost track of him. We didn't have cell phones in those days, and Gibby and I went to the tool shed of the studio, and he went to his girlfriend's house, and we had no way of getting a hold of him. We had his bass guitar and amp, so we used that stuff, but we just lost track of a bass player. And
Yes.
he was sitting there wondering why we weren't calling him, but we didn't know how to call him. And then we went through a series of bass players. We had a bass player named Terrence, who was a classmate of ours in college, and he went on tour with us. And then after a while, he just couldn't take it anymore. he woke up one morning demanding a glass of milk, and we were like, "Oh, we can't afford milk. I'm sorry. We could afford pot and beer, but we couldn't afford milk." And then he was just like yelling at us, like, "Why are you doing this?" It's like, and, we knew why we were doing it, but he couldn't figure it out. So he got a cab and left.
Yes.
Ended up joining the army and being stationed in Japan.
Yes. Who was the most traumatized bass player that you had?
That would have been Malcolm from Canada, who was a kid. After Terrence, I think we had we moved to Athens, Georgia, just because we threw a dart at a map and it landed on Athens, and so we moved to Athens, and we were buying pot from this guy named Juan Molina, who played bass with us and toured with us for just a little bit, but he wasn't a good fit.
Yes.
And then our label at the time was Touch and Go then, and Corey Russ from Touch and Go knew this kid in Canada that was interested in playing in a band, and he bought him a ticket to come to Athens, Georgia. And so this kid came down, and he brought a sousaphone with him, like a tuba.
Yes, that was very spectacular, wasn't it?
Oh God, that was so much fun. It was hell, packing everybody and a dog into the van with a tuba. But it was glorious to have that in the band. And then at one point on tour, we go into Canada and played in his hometown, and his old high school bandmaster showed up demanding the tuba back that he had stolen from the school. And once he lost his sousaphone, his days with us were numbered, and he left. But as you saw in the documentary, he couldn't even talk about his experience for a long time, and he seemed pretty traumatized. I feel bad for him.
Yes, I know. He he spoke eventually about it, didn't he? Which was quite something. But then, like I did mention at the beginning, we had, the early 70s glam. There was often two drummers, and actually, in Gary Glitter's band, the Glitter Band was kind of, and also I think Adam. Was it, no, Bow Wow Wow. I think they had two drummers, or was it Adam and the Ants? So
and then,
the Burundi.
Then there was the concert for Bangladesh.
This is true. But then, so then you got another drummer, didn't you? You had two drummers.
Yeah, that was a real coup for us when Teresa joined our band, and then we had two stand-up drummers, no kick drum, just a bunch of floor toms and rack toms and crash cymbals, and they were a lot of fun to play with.
That must have been, yes, then the band started. So your first album on Touch and Go at that stage was 84, wasn't it? Psychic Powerless. And that was
something around in there.
Yeah, that was, oh yes, because Athens, Georgia, this is the home of REM and B-52s, wasn't it? So, you had the Michael Stipe, and was there a band called Cylon as well, or I can't remember.
I don't remember them.
Yes. So where did you record your first album?
That was in the same recording studio that we recorded our first EP. And it was in a dodgy part of San Antonio where the prostitutes would stand out in front of the studio to sell their wares. And I remember one night I got to sleep in the studio, and the owner, as he left, handed me his pistol and said, "Okay, if anybody tries to break in, here you go." And sure enough, I'm sleeping on the floor, and somebody starts trying to beat the front door down, and I started yelling at him, and he didn't stop. He was trying to break the door down, and so I pulled back and cocked that pistol, and he could hear the cocking of the pistol through the door. And as soon as he heard that, he was like, "Oh man!" and he left. So then I had to spend the next hour trying to figure out how to uncock the thing. I'd never, shot a pistol in my life, and I was scared to death of it.
Yes, I could imagine. Gee, I would not want to have that responsibility, actually. Did you, at that stage, from the film, it seems incredibly amazing that anyone survived, like literally lived from, like with the van being in such condition, the living condition. Not many people survive, but you most of the band do, don't they? Are you kind of, how did you navigate that without sort of going down a sort of a dark, deep hole which ended in tears?
Well, we were pretty much down a dark, deep hole. And there were times when I just thought I was going to die, that I just thought I was committing suicide. But we were pretty good at burning our bridges. So it's not like we could go back to the world of, working for Pete, Mark, and Mitchell, or, I'd worked for a time at a lumber yard before going to California, and I didn't want to work at the lumber yard again. So I was pretty much, we were in it for the long haul, and it was the alternatives were either dying or making it, and fortunately
Yes.
we made it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because then as you progress through the 80s, obviously, that was kind of the decade that became much more obsessed with. Because it was kind of in the UK, we had the 3 weekly music papers, the NME, Sounds, Melody Maker. And we also had John Peel, which was the great sort of the beacon that you would go to, who curated this amazing show 3 or 4
Yeah,
times a
we
week.
got
And
we got to, we got to play John Peel once.
yes, well, you did 2 sessions, didn't
Oh,
you?
that's right, 2 sessions.
2 sessions. So you came to the Maida Vale Studios in London.
Yeah, boy, I remember walking in there, and it's such a nice building and so clean, and all these displays of memorabilia all over the place. And I remember thinking, what the hell are we doing here? We're fucking rats from the street.
Yes, and they probably said things like, "Oh, this is where Bing Crosby, stood and sung his last ever recording and stuff like that." Because a few people, or a lot of people who I've interviewed, have sort of not related. Got a big connection with Pipe Peel because that's where their music got played. And so having a John Peel session, which was so lucky. I mean, talk about the golden years of music and recording. So so you managed to get 2 sessions with him. Did you enjoy being in the studio, with the band? Was that your kind of happy place?
Oh, I love the studio. A lot of bands don't like being in the studio, but to me, the studio is the whole reason for all of it, because when you're in a recording studio, you're in control. You can make things the way you want them and do what you want. And once you walk out that door, all bets are off. And some people don't get that, but I did get that, and I just love recording. So that's why I ended up being a record producer.
Yes, well,
And
absolutely.
I have a studio in my house, and I fiddle around in there every day. It's a blast.
Did it take a while to sort of get your sound, and did it, and then sort of merge it with the band to create something? I mean, one of the bands I've always loved is Motorhead, especially the early albums. But I just thought they must have taken a while for it to eventually click. Was that the same with, your band?
Well, I felt like we never achieved our sound, and our sound was the shitty instruments that we could afford, and the shitty studio that we could afford to be in. And I never felt like I was getting it the way I wanted to get it, but somehow the records did well enough for us to continue on down the road, and then now people look at them as classics.
The classics.
So
I know we love the class. I mean, by the Lotus Abortion Technician. This is where. Do you feel like this is where you'd really got into your stride with the band?
yeah, because instead of going into a studio, we decided to just buy some recording equipment and record where we were living. And our first tape machine was this Ampex 300 1-inch 8-track machine, and it stood about 8 feet tall and weighed about 1,000 pounds, and it was glorious. I didn't know anything about maintaining a tape machine or any of that. We had like 2 or 3 reels of tape, and we would record on it and then mix it to a 1/2-inch tape, and we had like 2 microphones, and that kind of affected how we recorded, and it was just so much fun.
Yes, I could imagine. And then, so with this particular one, yes. So can you remember the recording of Sweet Loaf? This is one of the classics, isn't it? Can you remember how that song came about?
Oh, we were that point. We had moved back to Austin, Texas, and set up shop in this funky house that was stuck on some cinder blocks in the middle of a field. I don't think it was even supposed to be there, but we lived there for a while, and I wired up a studio. I wired up a 300-point balance patch bay and had wires going everywhere. And I'd suspended plywood with chains from the ceiling so that we'd have a place to sleep above the fray. And we would practice and play every day when we weren't on the road. And that was just something that happened at practice. You know, we were just broke into Sweet Leaf, or sort of, and then just kind of like bastardize it enough to make it our own.
Right, because it's yes, it suddenly comes out, and it kind of becomes a masterpiece. Did you at that stage had you started touring abroad, like Europe and UK at this point?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what year, but for a while our bass player was Kramer, who we knew from his band Shockabilly. And we would go to see Shockabilly because we were big fans of Shockabilly. And so we got to know Kramer. And I guess things fell apart with Shockabilly. And Kramer loved going to Europe. And he said, oh, hey, I think I can get you guys into Europe. And if you'll let me play bass. And so he was our bass player. We went to Europe. And I think at first we were billed as Mark Kramer's new band. You know,
Right.
and Shockabilly was the bigger letters than Butthole Surfers. And so I think like our first show was in Rotterdam at a big festival that had like Alex Chilton and the Cult and a bunch of big names, and we were just stuck right there in the middle of it. I think we played on the same stage right after the Cult, and you know I was like blown away because the Cult had Sanctuary, and I loved that song. And
Yes.
the thought that we were following that, and I got to watch them get up on the stage and come off the stage with a manager type person who was handling them and guiding them where to go and when to go and all that kind of stuff. And it just freaked me out because we didn't have anybody like that in our band. And you know, Gibby got real drunk and started heaving chairs of the audience during our set, and uh, he ended up like on acid and naked and taking on all the bouncers and almost getting killed. And oh, it was a hellish night. And I thought that was going to be the end of our band. But then the next morning, I look at the paper and there's a big picture of Giddy wearing a dress, downing a bottle of whiskey, and they called us the sensation of the festival. And
Right.
so by the time we got to England, there was an audience for us because you know I guess you guys like that kind of shit.
Well, yes. And also, I think when, to be honest, going back to that period, I mean, when John Peel would play something very obscure and unknown, it's like when you're kind of young, you just want to grasp it and also feel like you're the only one who's kind of heard it and you've discovered it. I think that
Yeah,
you forget what it's like when you're young. You feel like you want to be the one who discovered it. And if anything came from America, that gave it an added kudos, really. So it was like, my God, you've got to listen. Because at the same time, there was, the Husker Du and Sonic Youth were happening. And I don't know, Big Black were happening at that stage. But there was, because you mentioned Kramer, because I really liked the band that he also formed, which was Bongwater with
yeah.
and Magnuson, because there was a track that they did, which was, I just think is musical perfection. It's very sort of trippy, and it's just a very echoey vocal on it. And I just thought it was amazing. I thought it was like a Hawkwind number in places. So yes, dear old Kramer.
Kramer's a terrific bass player, and he's a lot of fun. But he's more out there than any of us. I think he's quite a character.
Yes, with his little shimmy disc records. Because actually, I came to see the Buttholes, which must have been 89, 90. And for some reason, it was in London and it seemed to be in quite a nice little venue under I don't know, was it some motorway or something? And I seem to remember Paul Smith from Blast First was somehow connected. Is that I definitely saw the band at that stage,
Oh
but
yeah, Paul Smith was our record company in Europe. So.
right, because I was looking, thinking, perhaps I've got this all completely wrong. But so it was Blast.
Speaking of characters, yeah, Paul Smith was quite a character, or is quite a character.
Yeah, because there was something about Paul Smith, and he was there, and being young, you think, oh my God, Blast First Records. So that was why, yeah. So we definitely saw it, and I remember feeling at that stage, which was quite exciting, slightly intimidated, come to see the band, thinking, God, what's going to happen. And it was fine, it was fine. And I remember Steve Mack from that Petrol Emotion was outside, hanging out, being cool, and he was going to be
All right.
come to see the band. So it was kind of
Cool.
an occasion. I can't, like I was just thinking about it after seeing the film, thinking, it must have been about 89, 90 period. And it was a summer's evening. I'd remember that. And I remember Gibby getting somebody's, from the crowd, someone's glasses off his face and just being sort of mesmerized by the whole sonic sensation of that show. It was amazing. So, there you go. There you go. I did sort of come to see the band at that stage. So we were very excited, as you can imagine. So you'd done Hairways as Stephen at that stage as well, put it that way. So yes,
Hazy memories of it all.
it is a lot of hay. Sorry about that, Rand. So that was so yeah. So then musically, things are starting to change, though, aren't they? Because by the late 80s, there was a whole suddenly the Seattle grunge scene starts to appear, and other things start to sort of come in. In this country, ecstasy comes along, so a lot of people are starting to down ecstasy and dance music. People are starting to merge this sound with, like the Primal Scream and Happy Mondays and Stone Roses. So what was it like for you, sort of going from touch and go in the late 80s and then sort of going into the 90s at this point?
Well, we, after Nirvana broke, all of a sudden there was a feeding frenzy for our kind of music, and uh, Capitol Records came along, and I was always a big fan of Dada and surrealism, and the thought of the Butthole Surfers being on Capitol Records was just too fucking funny, and so we had a few labels courting us, and could have been on any one of them, but the thought of being on the same label as the Beatles and Grand Funk Railroad and Creedence Clearwater Revival and Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and all of that was just too funny, and it just seemed too much to pass up. And then next thing I know, we're working with John Paul Jones, and that just blew my fucking mind. I was like, I thought I was Candid Camera was going to pop out and say it was all a joke. But it
Yes.
wasn't. It wasn't a joke. It was all real, and we got to ride it out.
Yeah. Did you, when you would come to do the Independent Worm Saloon, did you used to demo your songs first and have them all pretty well rehearsed before going into the
Yeah,
studio?
we had all that entire album all worked out, and we had all the songs pretty much worked out. And then John Paul Jones came to Austin for a week to hang out in our practice space and go over the songs and the arrangements and jam out. And then he was jamming out with us, and man, that was a trip. And
Right.
then we would drop him off at the Four Seasons at the end of the day and come back and pick him up in the morning.
And say,
And
right.
he was a lot of fun to work with. He's fucking cool as shit, dude.
Because my favourite song, I do love the Wooden Song. That was a great track, actually, isn't it? That was a really.
Oh,
Can you?
thank you.
I don't know. It was just a beautiful. It's a beautiful. I also love Hurdy Gurdy, but that's a cover of the Donovan one as well. Was that quite an easy one to put together, Hurdy Gurdy Man?
Oh, absolutely. But I heard that song. I think when I was in grade school at summer camp, I heard that song, and it blew me away. And I just the haunting vocal effect with the tremolo, and then hearing that nasty electric guitar come in, just playing a nasty bent note. Oh, I wanted to be like that.
Yes, I do. I do seem to remember John Peel playing that one. So then there was the other one that I guess everyone's going to, Electric Larryland. There was another
Yeah,
number on it, the Jingle of a Dog's Collar.
right.
That's again, you can see where I'm coming from here. These are songs from the 90s that I absolutely adore and would play on repeat a lot. That was. Can you remember how that song comes about?
Well, that one was pretty much all Gibby's creation. When we were living out in the country outside of Austin for a while, Gibby and our bass player Jeff Pincus got brother Jack Russell Terriers, and Jeff Pincus's Jack Russell Terrier was very well behaved and a lot of fun, and Gibby's Jack Russell Terrier just shit all over the place. I ended up having to move out of there because I couldn't take working in the studio that was full of shit.
Yes.
But Gibby absolutely loved that dog, and he was going through some rough times, and he developed a drug problem, and that song kind of came from that place where he was sad and lonely and in despair, and was taking comfort from the sound of the jingle of Mr. Cigar's collar.
Right. Yes. And and the Wooden Song, what was that? What was the origins of that track?
Well, I had some money and I bought myself an acoustic guitar. I bought a Martin, and that was like, I had it long enough to come up with that chord progression, and I came up with a chord progression, and Gibby came up with lyrics for it, and that was that.
Right. God, it was that simple, wasn't it? No, that was, again, I just thought that was stunning. I thought that was just amazing. Everything about it, lyrically and sonically, it was just genius at that stage. Then as the 90s progressed, I mean, it was a funny old decade, wasn't it? It sort of starts kind of quite optimistically. I don't know if you've seen Woodstock 99, but the 90s gets quite dreadful, really, doesn't it, by the end of the 90s? And seeing that film, I don't know if you've watched it.
Did. Rap and hip hop took over, and pretty soon, we weren't the cool bands anymore. We were kind of like the has-been bands.
Yes, but also, I mean, it was just like, Jesus. I mean, they were just, yes, it wasn't a great lineup. It wasn't a great, you can see why the 90s finished on a bit of a downer, and people thought we're going to have to do something about the next day. What was it like for you then in sort of navigating that period?
Well, by the time the late 90s came along, we'd had a radio hit in our song Pepper.
Oh, yes.
And that was a pretty miserable experience, actually. I have a hit song, and I produced a band called Sublime, and their album came out like a month after Electric Larryland came out. So I got to watch our song Pepper rise up the radio charts until it got to number one on the modern rock radio chart. And then as it was on there for a few weeks at number one, and then it started to fall back down. And as it was falling down, Sublime had a song off the album that I worked on, and it went up there to number one. So I was like, I thought I was in charge of the world. And it was a miserable experience. Bradley from Sublime died before his record came out, and that was a bummer. And I really thought having a hit song was going to make things a lot different for us. And the only thing it did was like piss off our old fans,
right?
Who thought we had sold out. And that kind of surprised me, because the thought of the Butthole Surfers selling out, to me, was the whole point. I mean, it was just the stupidest thing you could imagine. How do you sell out when you're the Butthole Surfers? And yet we managed to do it. And to me, that was the art. And I don't think people quite got it then. And I wasn't feeling a whole lot of love. And so it ended up being a miserable experience. And we ended up getting dropped by Capitol and picked up by Hollywood Records, who inherited an album that we had recorded for Capitol, but they didn't like the album as it was, and they insisted on us making changes, dropping songs, adding songs, and fucking ended up working on a song with Kid Rock. And oh my God, that's like, oh Jesus.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't what we were signed up for. And so things fell apart pretty quickly after that. And I just thought that was going to be the end of it. I had a career at that point as a record producer, so I just continued on. And that was late 90s. And then here we are in the 2020s, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this new love for the band springs up out of nowhere. And there's a documentary, and the old album that we recorded for Capitol is now come out. And
yes.
And I'm feeling a lot of love that I never felt when we were at the height of our career.
Well, yes. So that was after The Astronaut, the one that they dropped on Capitol, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So was Weird Revolution, your 8th album, was that Is that one of
That
the?
was that was what Hollywood Records put out, and it was a bastardization of After the Astronaut.
Right.
And like I said, a lot of the songs are the same, are the same songs, but then, there's arranged different and mixed different, and it was an album that I never liked, and our fans never liked. And then a couple of years ago, I was cleaning out an old band storage space, and I stumbled across the original 2-inch 24-track multi-track tapes that we had recorded for Capitol. And so I was like, oh man, I could mix this and we can make the album the way it was when we first made it and put it out and put a nice bow on our career. And, but the only problem is that Hollywood Records still technically owned those tapes. And so
Right.
I contacted Hollywood and asked if they would mind if we put that record out. And they, to their credit and my great surprise, they said yes. And so I was able to bring those tapes home and mix them at my house, and now we've got an album out, and it really kind of made things nice. All of a sudden our bad ending ended up with a happy ending.
Yes. So those songs on that album, there was Dracula from Houston. Is that a song that you don't have good memory?
Yes, I hated.
And
I was not a part of that song at all, other than I played I ended up playing on it, but to me it was Sweet Jane,
right,
and just something that I was not proud of, and it just yuck. Our record label's into it because they thought it sounded like something.
yes.
And the Kid Rock song ended up being the song they pushed the most, and we made a big, expensive, fancy video for it, which is kind of fun to watch. But it wasn't the same success as Pepper.
No.
So that was that.
Basically, avoid that album then.
I would.
Yes, well, that's it makes life easier. Yeah, so then, yes, you talk about, but you also you've done solo stuff as well, haven't you, apart from producing? You did The History of Dogs, which came out on Rough Trade Records.
Yeah, and then it was re-released on Kramer's Shimmy Disc label.
Yes.
And then I put out an album, a solo album called Born Stupid. And I which I made pretty much by myself with the help of Josh Freeze on the drums, who's, I don't know if you know him or not, but he played drums for Devo for 13 years and then played for, Weezer and then, most recently with Nine Inch Nails, touring with Nine Inch Nails. And he toured with Sting, and cool as shit dude, and he wanted to play on my record, and so hell yeah, that's like, what a great guy.
Yes, my God, so that came out as well. So when did this incredible film start to get sort of put forward? When did you suddenly sort of catch wind that someone was wanting to make a film about the band and your life?
Well, 5 or 6 years ago, I got a call from Tom Stern, who we've known since the 80s. Back in the 80s, Tom Stern and his friend Alex Winter, who was like a movie star at the time, they wanted to make a film of their own, and they wanted. Oh, there you are.
I wondered why the green dot wasn't on. Jesus, sorry about that, Paul.
No, I got to look at a picture of a couple of cats, and so I was joining the cats.
Yes. That all makes anyway. Yes. Yes. So
Tom and Alex came to Texas, and we made this movie. I forget what it's called. You can see it on YouTube. It's like Entering Texas or something like that. And it was intended to be like a trailer to sell a movie that they wanted to make. And they sold the movie idea to Fox or some big ass company, and they got a big ass budget. But Fox didn't want it to star the Butthole Surfers, which we were supposed to be the centerpiece of the movie, and the people that bought the movie weren't having it. So they replaced us with Brooke Shields and Keanu Reeves and Mr. T and Randy Quaid. It ended up being an all-star cast. And we were delegated to like doing some music for the movie, and Gibby had a cameo in it. But it's a really funny as hell movie. But then Fox got a new president, and the new president hated that movie, so it never really came out. And so about 5 or 6 years ago, somebody stumbled across the original 16 millimeter film of that. And so they had a film showing of it at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood. And I had done some music for that movie. And Tom Stern called me and asked if I'd be willing to come out for the screening of it, and asked if I would play guitar along with the movie. And I was like, hell yeah. And so we set up a guitar amp and a guitar in front of the screen. And, there's like 4 or 5 scenes where I jump up there and play along with the movie. And that was a blast. And I was staying at his house, and he was like, I'd really like to make a documentary about the Butthole Surfers. And been approached by a number of filmmakers wanting to do a documentary, and I was never sold on the idea. But Tom Stern is a comedic genius, and he got the band, and he was into the band since way early on. And so I was like, oh hell yeah! If you want to do it, let's do it.
Yes.
And then it was 5 years in the making after that.
Blimey.
And I think he did a good job too.
Well, yes, absolutely, because obviously there's lots of moments that you have to fill in with a slightly animated sort of moments to sort of keep the narrative running. Had you
It's all in the editing, man. The guy that edited that movie did a fantastic job, and I have a whole new respect for editing process of movies. It just keeps it going.
Well, yes, it has a good fluidity and sort of energy. It never sort of flags. So, had you had much to do with the band after the sort of the breakup of it? Had you had much contact with Gibby or anybody else?
We talk all the time. Yeah, we're brothers.
Right. So
Gibby moved away to Brooklyn, and I stayed in Austin. King stayed at Austin. Jeff Pincus quit the band right before Electric Larry Land, but he would still play live with us. But he ended up moving to North Carolina. But
yes.
Other than it was nice having a break from the band after a couple of decades of touring and knocking ourselves silly. It was fun to sit at home and have a life as a normal human being. And I got to be in the studio and produce records for other bands, and that's kind of what I dig doing anyway.
Yes. So did you sit down at that stage where you said the band is going to be kind of no more, can we just get on with the rest of our lives? Do you have a process at that point?
No, it just worked out like that. There was no discussion, no nothing other than After the Astronaut, or they call it Weird Revolution was the name of the album that Hollywood Records put out. That was the bastardized version of After the Astronaut.
Yes.
And I think at that point, none of us really wanted to mess with it anymore. And Gibby was going through a lot of his drug problems. And so there was just no way we were going to make another record or tour or anything like that. And I thought he was going to die from his addiction, and he got very close. And God bless him, he met and married a really wonderful woman who's super intelligent and strong and fun. And he's married, and he has a teenage son now, and he's a dedicated dad. And I'm just glad he's still with us.
Yes, it must. I mean, without putting words in your mouth, but it did seem quite an emotional film. There was the sort of, from watching it, this kind of very close relationship between the two of you, but also these kind of like the sort of underneath the surface of what was going on and his kind of childhood trauma that he had. I mean, it seemed.
I didn't know about his childhood trauma until I saw the movie. That's like I just didn't know.
Right. So when that kind of came out, and there was something about when you see people who are, I suppose, are clean and just have got that history but have sort of somehow processed it. It seemed like old friends who've kind of reconnected. Obviously, you were saying that you always kept in touch with him, but there was something about this kind of relationship between the two of you and him moving away from Texas, from what somebody said in the film, that was the reason things fell apart. But that wasn't quite true then.
Well, before he moved to New York, he had moved to Los Angeles and was like living with Johnny Depp, and that we weren't going to be making records as long as he was out, hanging out in Los Angeles. And At that time, it was fine with me because there was just too many drugs. I didn't want to be any part of that, and I was quite happy being in the studio producing records for other people.
Yes, because I do remember dear old Lemmy from Motorhead absolutely hated heroin. I think it was because he had a girlfriend who died in his flat, and I think he just was traumatized. So he obviously liked other drugs and Jack Daniels, but always avoided that and hated it intensely. Did you also have a sort of dislike of that whole scene?
Absolutely, it just gross. It wasn't my scene. I was a beer and pot kind of guy.
Yes. And acid?
Well, I did that in high school or junior high school, and when I was like 15 years old, I went to school one morning, and like the prettiest girl in school came up to me and put a tab of acid in my mouth, and she was so cute, and I wasn't going to say no. And the next thing I know, the lockers are coming out of the wall to talk to me, and I was just tripping my brains out. And next thing I knew, I was freaking addicted to acid. I was taking it every day, like before school and at night before bed, and just if I didn't get it, I would start freaking out. I had to have it just about every day. And then in college, I knew I had to give that up because it's just not good for the brain, and I think my brain permanently suffered damage from it.
Yes,
Um,
well, that was quite
yeah,
intense. Because it was because a guy called Aaron Tanner,
yeah,
he had a publishing place, didn't he? Because he did a book recently on a band called the Cardiacs, which was quite niche, but sold out, and now you can't get a copy. But he also did one on the Buttholes as well, didn't he? What
yeah.
does regret mean? Were you pleased with that kind of process and publication?
I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. There have been a couple of books written about the band, and um, I've started reading one of them, and I got through a chapter or two, and then all of a sudden it was too depressing, and I just had to like forget about it.
Yes, well, absolutely. And then, so did you? I know this sounds a bit corny, but was seeing the film and going through that process, did it feel like a healing experience a little bit? Was there a sort of a sort of some closure or some at least healing? Oh Christ, that's such a corny word, but you know what I mean. Did that
Oh
feel?
yeah, it brought the band back together in a way because we ended up going into the studio to record a Donovan song of all things, and so we got together to record in the studio, which was a lot of fun. And then we had to do a bit of promotion for the movie, and uh, but it was fun to get together with the guys, and there was no drugs around, and so it was just really great. And not only that, but going to screenings of it at film festivals and stuff, we would do Q&As, and being in theaters where the theaters sold out and standing ovation at the end and people laughing and clapping during the movie. I was just blown away by that because I was worried that nobody was going to show up and that nobody was going to like it and that it was just going to be a failure. And it turned out quite different.
Yes. Did you really feel like unloved with the band? Did you feel like the
Yeah,
love
we
had
took a
gone?
lot of grief. We took a lot of grief for that, Weird Revolution album, and rightfully so. We up until that point we were in control of our own destiny, and then with that album, all of a sudden we were just puppets on the end of strings being pulled around, and that's just not us. And we needed to be us, and so
Did
we
you
were
did you
finally able to be us again.
Well, yes. Did you ever have good management? Did that ever was that ever part of the band?
No, we had a manager for a number of years, and when we signed with Capitol, they weren't going to sign us unless we had a manager. So we enlisted the services of our pot dealer, and he
Excellent.
became our manager. And the record label treated him like a hillbilly, and he he had his own drug problems, but he was sober when he became our manager, and he was sober for a number of years, and then he went back to using hard drugs, and that's when our relationship with Capitol fell apart because they weren't going to they don't need that.
Yes. Well, absolutely. Yeah. Did you? Yeah. On that sort of, I know there's this sort of publishing and ownership of music. With your catalog, do you own it now? Is that what do you have that control?
We have the control. A couple of years back, we signed with Matador Records, and they've re-released all of our pre-Capitol Records albums up through Hairway to Steven, I guess. I forget the chronicle
Yes.
order of our albums, but it's a number of albums are now out on Matador Records, and that was quite a process because I was remixing and remastering everything, and that was quite a process.
Well, I would imagine, actually. Yes. So actually, it's not been bad, has it, really? Did it, because there was a scene in it, with dear old Steve Albini, who's a little bit savage towards to the
Oh,
band.
yeah, definitely, which I wouldn't have it any other way, really. I mean,
how did you feel about his comments about that?
I totally expected that. He was a good friend of Corey Rusk, who who was Touch and Go Records, and we had quite a nasty falling out with Touch and Go when we went to Capitol. He was offended, and then we were going to go on a big world tour, and we were like, talked to Touch and Go and talked to Corey and said, hey, how about doing some advertising for our catalog to go inside with this tour? He was like, no, I'm not going to do it. He was, at that point, he was not into being cooperative with us at all. And so then I found out that some friends of ours who were also on Touch and Go had a better deal than we did. And so I was like, man, I think we deserve to have that same deal as, Scratch Acid or whoever it was.
Yes.
And he refused to do that. And that kind of ticked me off because we put that label on the map. They were nothing until we came along, and then they were a label. And at some point in that process of dealing with that, Corey told me over the phone that he owned our music for life. And that one just really rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, no, you don't. In fact, you don't own it anymore, period. And then we went to court and got our music back, and he appealed, and we went to district court in Chicago. And that's a big deal. That's one step below the Supreme Court. And
yeah.
Judgment was also in our favor. It was costly and everything, but we got our music back, and we released the back catalog ourselves on Latino Boogervale Music for a number of years, and then King was mostly in charge of that, and he got tired of dealing with it, and that's when we sold to Matador Records.
Right. God, that's amazing. What a story, actually. That's Did you find over the years the royalty checks have changed quite a bit with the band? Do you sometimes think, oh yes, we've become much more popular now because things seem
yeah, definitely, and not just Butthole servers, but also Sublime, which I collect royalties on. Right after Independent Worm Saloon came out and the Sublime self-titled album came out, what also came out was something called Napster. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yes, very much.
Those were very dark days for musicians because all of a sudden the kids were like, music should be free. And all I could think was my lawyer should be free, but he's not. And at that point, at the height of Napster, I watched royalty checks go down to like nothing. I mean, nothing. And then with the end of Napster and the advent of streaming like Spotify and Pandora and Apple Music and all that stuff, slowly it started to build itself back up again. And so it was kind of fun to hit rock bottom and wonder if I'd made a horrible mistake going into music at all, and then just watch it come back all by itself. It was great.
It must be a relief. Yeah, well, I guess, it makes those years now seem a bit better. You think, yes, it is a pension plan. Hurrah.
Yeah, there's nothing better than getting paid for work you did 30 years ago that you don't even barely remember doing. It's awesome.
Well, actually, now I've got to that age where I have to count back on my fingers because you think that was 30 and you go, Christ, no, it's 40. Oh my God, that's weird. Yes, the mid-80s. Well, yes, when I was watching some of yes, with this. So going forward then, I mean, obviously the film, is I just thought it was amazing and I loved it. So what's your next kind of projects in the studio or, working on new recordings? Have you got anything in the pipeline?
Well, the last album I produced was, I guess it was last spring. It was for a fellow named Gus Engelhorn, and whose music I'd mixed a previous album of his and fallen in love with him and his music. And he's just terrific musician and songwriter. And if you're not familiar with him, he's kind of got a quality like Daniel Johnston, except without the mental illness. And
What was his surname? Gus?
Gus Engelhorn. And the album that I produced last spring is called Ballad of the Broken Balladeer. And that was so much fun to go into the studio with him and his wife, Estee, and make that record. It's a two-piece band. And Estee, his wife, plays the drums. And she'd never played drums before, so she comes at it with this innocence, but yet she's actually very good at it and the perfect drummer for his music. And then I got Kramer to play bass on the album, and it's a cool album, and it's pretty obscure still because if I try to sell music to a label that I've worked on, they're not going to listen to me at all. Nobody ever took my advice and signed a band on my advice. So I think I just like weird. I think I just like weird music or something like that because he's terrific and he tours and he goes to Europe and he's super responsible and super capable and. So that was the last album I produced. I don't know if I'm going to be producing any more albums. I'm 69 years old right now, and rock is a young man's game, and I'm really quite happy waking up in the morning and having a cup of coffee and jumping on my bicycle and riding for 2 hours and then coming back and taking a nice long nap. And that's me. That's where it's at.
Well, absolutely. I can relate to the bike, actually, bicycling. It's good. It's good all-round exercise. It's good on your knees. It's not going to damage your hips.
It's good on the soul.
It's good on the soul. I know. Fresh air and all that malarkey.
And also we have a nice series of bike lanes, so I can do it without worrying about getting run over by cars.
Yeah, this is what we have in the UK. Not the bike lanes, the worry of being run over, basically.
Yeah, I can't imagine riding a bike in London.
No, I've done it once. It was a bit traumatic. Yes. So there's So that's that actually. So there's no kind of new solo albums or anything, but just studio work and archiving.
No, I mix for other bands now. It's kind of just for fun, and if I feel like doing it, I do it, and if I don't, I don't.
Yes.
And, right now, I'm in the middle of mixing 2 albums at the same time, and hoping I can get done with that, and then hopefully make another album of my own or with my other band, which we put out an album a few years ago under the band name Cocky Bitches.
Oh,
and we need a new band name, and hopefully there'll be a new album out by whatever band we call ourselves.
Yes. Is this with Sam McCandless?
Sam McCandless, yes, who was in a band called Cold, and his wife, who is really quite an interesting character. It's hard to describe her. She's a tall former fashion model, strong mind, and very twisted. And she's a lot of fun to work with, and she's very creative. And so, but it's a little tricky because nobody wants to put our music out, but we're going to make it anyway, and
Well, that's the main thing. What's her name? Because from Discogs, it's got his name.
She goes by the name Baroness.
Right.
And her background is her family tree traces back to 13th century Black Forest, Bavaria. Her family lineage is her family owned the Black Forest, and her great grandfather was a close military. I don't know if he was a general or what under Adolf Hitler, and was tried at the Nuremberg trials and denied ever having any contact with Adolf. But she's got pictures of him walking down the street with Hitler holding hands. And
Right. Well, that's one for the dinner party, isn't it?
Yeah, and then her dad, when she was growing up, her dad went from being a rocket scientist at NASA to being a pilot for Pablo Escobar. So she's got the strangest, most bizarre background of anybody I've ever known. So,
wow, that's God. What's her interior design like at home? I mean, is it interesting?
She bought a 100-year-old house in a small town in Texas, and it's almost spooky, like a haunted house, but it's full of old fashioned woodwork. It was like a rich person's house back in the day, and now it's not a rich person's house, but it sits on a full city block. So it's one house on a city block, and if you saw it, you might be scared to go up to the door.
Is it a bit like the Munsters then, sort of?
Yeah,
right. The Munsters meet Carry On Screaming. Wow, I have to say, you must get excited when you get invited around again. Right, I wonder what she'll cook for us today. Or they will. Yeah, that's cool. Blimey. So, yes, quite a few. And just as on the film, I think you also, and I think Gibby as well, cats. You both have cats, don't you? Which I
don't know if Gibby may have a cat. He's more of a dog person. He's had a few dogs.
You had the cat.
Yeah, I've got the cat.
And did you also have a dog in the house, or was it just the cat? This is
just the cat for a number of years. My last dog was back in the early 80s. We rescued a pit bull from the San Antonio dog pound, and we picked her up and put her in the van and went on the road for several years. And she was a wonderful dog. She was a pit bull. She was the sweetest dog in the world, and everybody loved her. Even people that didn't like dogs loved this dog. And she kept us grounded. And I slept in the van every night to protect our equipment, and the dog slept with me. And she saved my life in New York City one night when people started breaking into the van, and me banging on the walls of the van didn't stop them. They were like still going to break in with me in there. And then the pit bull starts making a flapping meat sound like, bad. And then they changed their mind. And so I was like, okay, this dog saved my life. Someday I'm going to give her a fenced in backyard, and she's going to retire from the road and live a life of luxury. And I was able to deliver on that. And he passed away in the backyard while lying in the sun.
Well,
and,
I guess
I was in the studio with a band called the Toadies, and got the call from my then wife that my dog Mark Farner had passed away, and so I had to leave the studio and go bury her in the backyard and go right back to work. It was a dark day.
That was that's never.
And I haven't been able to get another dog since. I just loved her to death.
Yes, no, those connections with our pets are just so special. So when did you get your cat, by the way?
About 6 years ago.
A lockdown pet.
A friend of my sister sent me a picture of a kitten that she was fostering, trying to find a home for, and the cat just looked so adorable that I had to have her. My wife and I had rescued a feral cat that was living in a business park. And some ladies at the business park were feeding this cat, but the owners of the business park had let everybody know that they were going to drive the cat out, that it was the food being left out for it was attracting raccoons, and they were going to get rid of the cat. And so my wife and I, we stepped in and adopted this cat and brought her home. And she was a little freaked out being feral, and we were working on her, getting her to trust us and love us. But we came across the idea of giving her a companion. So we adopted this kitten from the San Antonio Feral Cat Association in San Antonio, and to be her companion. And they were great companions. But then the first cat ended up dying of feline leukemia, which is a common problem for feral cats.
Yes.
But we still have Milo, and he's like our child.
Well, yes, we've got Oscar. We got him 6 years ago after we'd lost those previous two after 15 years that you saw earlier on the...
It's hard losing a cat.
Oh, it's horrendous. I mean, that routine. I mean, unlike friends and family, you never fall out with your cat. You don't come home and think, oh God, I really don't want to speak to anybody. But they come up to you and you go, oh, no.
No.
They just do everything, they are just it really for me. And those moments where you have to wake up and they're not there that day is just hideous. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But, I love those cute cat videos on TikTok. That made me fall in love with TikTok, was cat videos. And to this day, I still love watching cat videos on TikTok.
Well, yes. Well, I can spend a good minute watching. Well, the ones where they just decided to trash someone's house accidentally while jumping around.
Oh,
Those
yeah. I think I know which ones you're talking about, where they're all jumping around and shit's flying everywhere.
All jumping in the goldfish pond and jumping out and all knocking people's computers over. And, it's just like hilarious. But anyway, yes, I know. Well, Milo, was that named after Milo Minderbinder from Catch-22 or just Milo?
The cat came with the name Milo. The woman who was fostering him and his two brothers, they let the neighborhood kids name the three kittens, and they named Milo, and we weren't going to change his name.
Yes, no. There you go. There you have it. Well, yes, we've got Oscar. So, and to be honest, we are quite neurotic with our ownership because we let him out during the day, but when he comes in the evening, we keep him in because I don't want him wandering off.
We have coyotes in our neighborhood. I live in fairly central Austin, but yet we have deer and foxes and armadillos and coyotes and all kind of crap roaming through the yard. I come home to see coyotes in the backyard, and they tend to tear cats up pretty bad. And Milo goes outside 2 or 3 times a day, but he's always supervised. And because we've been taking him outside since he was a kitten, if I took him outside and he started to wander away, I would just bring him back inside, and over time he learned not to stray far away, and so we still supervise him when he goes outside.
Yes, I like that. Yes, Oscar's well. Yes, he has the same. He must think we're very neurotic, but that's just me.
And they don't understand the pitfalls of the real world.
No, they're the little sweetness. But look, Paul, thank you ever so much for this. I really appreciate it. It was amazing. And like I said, it was yes, a long time ago when I came to see the band in London. But yes, it was all good stuff. A fantastic gig.
We loved going to London. I mean, there were times when we'd go to London and all of a sudden for some reason, London would make me so homesick, just like go there. I don't know what it is about London, but then we would end up having so much fun, and the people we met and worked with in London were always so interesting and so much fun, and I miss all that.
Yes, well, at least you did it. That's the main thing. You did it. You've got the work to prove it. So anyway, look, thank you again for your time. It's been amazing. And yes, all the best for the film. I hope it all gets a good... So on the release front, does it go out on DVD and then eventually streaming, by the way?
It opens at the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema Theater chain at the end of August, and its run will be at least a week, depending on how well it's received. A minimum of a week, and maybe hopefully longer. And then after it's done with its theatrical release, it will be video on demand, and then after that, DVD and Blu-ray. At least that's what I've been told. I really stay out of the business end of it. Other than to go to screenings and do Q&As and stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's going to do wonders for the interest in the band again, actually. Interesting, isn't it? Well, look, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. And
I sure enjoyed talking with you, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, no problem. Take care, Paul. Thanks again. Cheers.
Adios.
Bye-bye. And that was me in conversation with Paul Leary from the Butthole Surfers. This has been the C86 show, David Eastaugh. Have a great week. Stay safe.